Welcome to the channel. My name is Rogan Freewolf, and I am a survivor of religious trauma syndrome. Up to this point on this channel, everything that's been created has been mostly geared with the intention in mind of bringing awareness to the concept of religious trauma syndrome. But today, that changes. Because in this video, we're going to be talking about dealing with the repercussions of religious trauma itself. Or at least some of those aspects. Particularly the aspects that I've had to work through and have learned how to heal myself from. Now, this is not, I am not a professional. I'm not a psychologist. I am just a survivor. I was a missionary kid for 10 years in Russia. My parents homeschooled me for that entire time, as well as up till when I was 18, after we moved back to the United States. So I virtually never had any regular schooling in a regular type of classroom setting. And so I've had a very, very different kind of life. Initially, I believed in the Bible and everything that my parents taught me to believe, their version of how everything happened and how the world came to be. And eventually, as an adult, I came to realize that things were not quite how I was taught, and it really, really tore me apart. There were a number of things that came out of that as a result. And if you talk to any person who's left a major religion, you'll understand how they feel. And so it's not always easy to relate to. It's for a lot of people, it's a lot like coming out of a cult in many ways. But these videos, there are going to be the advice that I'm sharing. It will be useful for people with outside of religious trauma. Like, watch today's video, and you just might learn something that will help you to deal with something that you need to let go of, perhaps. But it's not just for anyone, but because this is where I'm coming from an ex-religious standpoint, and a lot of people have gone through their own version of the same kind of issues with religion, realizing that Islam or how the Amish or the Muslims believe, that realizing that there's a little bit more to life than just what's in one holy book. And so today I am speaking primarily to other people with religious trauma syndrome, people who are dealing with and carrying a lot of hurt and a lot of baggage. And we're going to be talking today about how to heal from the hurt. So by all means, feel free to listen in if you don't have religious trauma syndrome yourself. But I've written some notes down, just a few basic things, and this is just based off of my personal experience, what I've been through, and there will be more to come, because there's always more to talk about with religious trauma. But this is just what I have learned about how to deal with, how and combined from the teachings and experiences that I've gone through and have been able to heal myself with. And so I'm just here passing it on to you. I'm not saying this is going to 100% guarantee everything will be running smooth, but I know it's going to work for some people because it worked for me. So, my friends, my fellow religious trauma syndrome survivors, hi! Welcome! So good to have you here. I'm so excited. Even though you're not physically here, you know, I've finally getting to talk with other people like me in this format. This is nice. Uh, there's a lot of hurt that we have, don't we? Coming out of, it doesn't matter what religion we come out of. There's always a major reason and a major amount of pain attached to it as to why we left religion. I am not going to get into why I left because it's a little bit different for me, but for a good portion, and I don't know if this is for sure or not, but from the number of people that I've talked to and read stories of, it seems to me like the vast majority of people, if they're not realizing that the religion itself is fictional on their own, they realize it because someone else within the religion hurt them. And so there's always someone involved in the pain process of us leaving. Even if they didn't cause us to leave, even after we leave, we realize, oh, those people, we realize some people were fake, some people treated us worse than they should have, or, you know, we realize some people, we may just have a lot of pain and have so much pain that we don't fully understand why some people hurt us the way they did. And so especially the fresher, the more recent you are out of religion, and the closer you are being stuck to it, it's hard to draw back and look at things as how they actually are when you're stuck right in the middle of it and it's all swirling about and in your face and everything. So from the perspective of you're no longer in it, you know, this is going to be geared towards specifically dealing with the hurts of from that we have attached with other people that may still be in that religion that we left. Okay, so in my case, for this, after I left religion, I had a lot of anger issues towards the religion itself a long time later, and we're actually going to talk about anger towards those inanimate objects like God and church and those triggers that make us mad and stuff. That's actually going to be the next episode, how to deal with triggers. But this one is specifically dealing with the people that were causing hurt, that we ended up having grudges against, either immediately when they were doing it to us or a while later when we realized maybe they were screwing us over, and then we developed some anger and maybe some hatred and just that overall sense of pain, of feeling of betrayal. So when I left religion, I realized that there were people within religion that had hurt me. And today's case, I'm going to be referring to my dad a lot. because he was probably the number one person that hurt me the most in my life. Even though I don't believe he always meant to. He wasn't the worst dad out there. I don't want to get into all the goods and bads of my dad. But in a court of law in today's society, in the modern world, if you were younger and there was all recorded evidence and all the witnesses testified and everything, and the psychologists and doctors were brought in to verify everything, he would be in prison right now. But instead, he's in the grave. May he rest in peace. But I was able to. I went through a whole set of emotions with dealing with my dad. Some of which I'll talk about here. But I was eventually able to let go of the hatred and anger that I had towards him, and was able to give myself healing because I did that. Doing that was able to let me heal and be able to move on, and to see things as to how they were, and be able to not accept the things my dad did, but accept life, to be able to just move on without it being a grudge in my subconscious. So there's 3 basic things. They're not going to be simple to swallow, but three things that helped me to heal. And I broke it down into a little acronym. My dad was a preacher. He liked to use acronyms. So we're going to use the word AID, A-I-D, for our 3 points. The first thing you're going to want to remember is that you need to accept that this will take some time and effort. That is the healing. Accept that this will take some time and effort. Almost nothing happens overnight, okay? Superhuman healing powers aren't real. You're never going to be Deadpool or Wolverine on a physical human level. So what makes you think that mental trauma is going to be a cakewalk to fix? But if you want to be a more functional and overall better adult, then you got to fix what's been damaged, right? Time does not heal all wounds. I mean, if that were the case, maybe we wouldn't have to take our cars to the mechanic shop when they break down. Maybe they would just heal on their own. Wouldn't that be nice? Unfortunately, the same thing actually applies to our bodies. You get a small cut. If it's small enough, it heals on its own, but the bigger it gets, well, then you're going to need a Band-Aid, or maybe a clean rag if you've got nothing else available. If it gets really bad, you might need to go to the hospital, get some stitches, or a cast, or who. Time isn't not enough, my friends. So just letting your mind go and not doing anything about it, about what's been done to you, about the grudges and everything that bogs you down, when everything seems to be, when you're just a typically negative person, everything seems dark and depressing. Well, that's because your mind is in a crummy state and it needs to be fixed. And there are little signs. Because you live with it, it's harder to see, but there are actual signs. If you research it and you pay attention, it's different for everyone, but you will see the things that, your tendency to overreact to things, that's a big one for a lot of people. Getting triggered easily. Being triggered easily is a sign that you've got some kind of grudge issue going on, or some kind of self-image, depending on what you get triggered by. Your triggers will tell you what's wrong with you and what you need to work on. That's something else we'll talk about in the next episode, apparently. Though I wasn't planning on talking about triggers again. So, yeah, and everyone needs to, even if you don't have trauma, everyone needs to be aware of these signs, because everyone can develop them over time. And just like a car has a check engine light, or the light comes on when the oil needs to be changed, or if they have those. The mechanics is not strong with me. I'm an artist, not an architect. I guess they're kind of the same. You know what I mean? It's what you get for being homeschooling your kids for 12 years. Oh, 8 or 18. 12 grades. But you see the issue here. You need to fix your mind. Everyone needs to fix their mind. And you have to take the time to actually do it. You have to take the time to take your car to the mechanic shop. You have to take the time to put the Band-Aid and, the rubbing alcohol, all that stuff on your arm or your leg or wherever you got that cut that just won't stop bleeding. You got to take the time to do that. You got to take the time to fix up here, too. And it's going to take some time. It is okay to mess up. It's not okay to mess up on purpose, but it's human and okay to mess up in general. As long as you're trying and you're learning, it doesn't matter how many times you mess up, because you will get better if you are genuinely trying and you keep trying. So accept that it's going to take a while for you to get better. Just try to be a little bit better of a person today than you were yesterday. Just take it one step at a time like that, and you'll be okay. Well, I suppose if that were the case, then, well, we wouldn't need this video now, would we? But then, well, this is the next step that we're coming to right now. So if you're ready to move on from that little bit and you're ready to take that next adult step, then let's get on to the second step. Second step is to identify the real causes behind the effects. Now you're saying, well, wait a minute. The cause was that the religion was bullshit. Or the cause were the people that drove me to realizing and hurt me, that made me realize that religion was bullshit. So the people are the cause, right? The people who hurt me, the people who invented the religion in the first place that hurt me, it's the people's fault, right? It's just the people's fault, right? We can pin it all on these people. It's easy to think that. It is very easy to think that. But that is, in fact, never the complete picture. There is always there's always a bigger reason. You take what my father did to me. Well, my experience is enough because I don't need to speak. And it was different for everyone else a bit. But the way my father chose to punish us whenever we did something wrong, it was very abusive. Just the setup, he wouldn't let us cry. And he knew, evidence was even found that he knew he was actually being harsher in his beatings to us than what he knew was actually necessary. Like he preached about it in a sermon where he compared his style to other parents' style of spanking, and actually said, but that's just how we do it. As in his was, he felt other people's ways were just as legitimate as his, but his were stricter, and he just did it his way because that's just how we do it. That was when I heard those recorded words come out of his mouth, or out of the speaker I was listening to them on. That was the angriest I have ever been at another human being. And I wanted to hurt my dad. I wanted to physically hurt him. But then I learned something. And it was this thing that I had learned that helped me to let go of this desire to take revenge. I learned that growing up, my father had been beaten tremendously worse than what he had beaten any of my siblings and I. He was still bad in some ways, but I think I know. No, I know. There's no other possible way it could have been. That as hurt as he was, I mean, there were things he tried to do right, and I think this is the hardest part for a lot of people. It's very hard for me because of all the pain and suffering I went through. My dad was very neglectful. He really didn't know how to properly raise his kids because he was like, no lie, he was taught to believe to not be friends with his children. And that was one of the causes. In addition to the fact that he was beaten even worse than I was. Some things that my dad picked over time didn't even happen to him as a child, but between his youth and becoming a parent, where he picked certain beliefs up along the way, and then some after he became a parent. And so there were a whole bunch of other things involved that were influencing my dad. Yes, it was all on him in the moment. He will always be responsible for the things he did. But I was never beaten to a point of unconsciousness or to a point of bleeding. But he was. He was put in a lot of positions that I never was. That if I had been, I may not have been able to keep my sanity to stay alive. I may have not been able to survive it. I may have had to off myself from depression, from how terrible it was, or because I came within thought range of it pretty seriously at one point, even while being a Christian. Never thought about it after leaving Christianity, only while being a Christian did I ever think about offing myself. Kind of odd, really. You'd think such a happy-go-lucky religion would never have such a thing happen if it were legit, or as legit as it should be. But I'm sorry, but my whole point of that was that my dad was not the true cause of my suffering. He was the tool. He was the tool in a chain of abuse. His parents hurt him. Whoever hurt them, they were hurt by someone else. They were hurt by someone else. And it's just, that's the real enemy. That's the real cause. It's not the victims. The victims that don't heal, yeah, they pass it on. But they didn't ask to be put in the way of that other victim. They didn't ask to be the nephew or niece of that abusive uncle or aunt. They didn't ask to be in that church group, under that church leader that took their power and influence way too far. They didn't choose the bad things that happened to them. And when bad things happen to you and you don't know how to cope you don't know how to deal with it. Yeah, some people are fortunate and figure it out on their own, but a lot of people don't. It's not their fault. It's really not, because there's so many natural reactions to have. It's natural to be angry. It's because that anger is a survival instinct that you need to be able to survive in the wild. You need to be angry to fight back against what's killing you. But when you're no longer in the scene, when you're no longer there, when you're no longer in direct contact and influence of that abuse, and you're still letting it harm you from a distance, that's you reliving the past. Whenever you think about it and you feel that pain, you affiliate that with that person, and you hold it over that person. The person themselves, think about it. Like, think about it with my dad. If my dad had been raised not also being a missionary kid himself, and if he had been gone to school like a normal kid, had more normal friends, been raised in a more normal church environment, even maybe if his dad wasn't known for splitting churches, if he just had a bit more normal of a life, a bit more normal of a family. He was also the oldest of 9. Even 9's a lot for back in the day when they had more kids. Like, dang. It was very different for him. It was a whole different world. Not just a different time, but his world was completely different than the world around him. And his understanding of the world was completely different than how the world actually was. Same for me and how I was growing up. I feel like I understand how the world actually is better now than I did back then, but I still feel like I hardly know shit. But I came to realize that if my dad hadn't been raised the way he had, if he had been raised in a normal good life, more healthier upbringing, then he would have raised me a lot better than he actually did. I give him credit where credit is due. I try to. And the fact that I don't hold anything against him. Because there's honestly not a lot of good that he did. It's very small in comparison to what he did against me. But I let go of what he did against me, the purposeful and unpurposeful, because I realized it was never about me. The things he did wrong, purposefully or non-purposefully, it wasn't about me. It was about him and his trauma, and the way he was raised, and the way he was hurt, and the way he was dealing with his own trauma, even though he wasn't dealing with it right. Because instead of learning that being a terror is a bad thing, he was a terror to his kids and kids in general. Kids were scared of him. He didn't cope well. He didn't he didn't really completely know and understand that, though. And that's not completely entirely his fault either. Some of it is for him not being more open-minded, but he was also raised to be more closed-minded. In a sense, it was beaten into him. They did, my dad and the people who hurt you, they did what they did because they got hurt and never got to properly heal. So it's the same for you. What they did against you isn't for you to take personally against you. In their healed or unbroken, their proper state of mind, they would have never done those things to you. And that's an important thing to remember. Very important to remember. So, while yes, I know it is easiest to just think about them in that memory of yours where they did that bad thing and they scarred you, it's easy to lock them into that one memory or that one chain of memories from that one period of your mutual existence together where they hurt you. But in order for you to heal, in order to be able to begin to heal fuller, it's important to realize that that person that hurts you, they're more than just this part that's locked into your memory. They are so much, they're a lot more. They didn't do that moment to you because of anything you did, necessarily. Every situation is different, but they went overboard. Whether there was any blame of yours in it or not, it doesn't matter. When you're mentally traumatized and scarred for life, someone went overboard somewhere when it's caused by another person. What caused them to do that to you, though, was a whole lifetime of buildup and bullshit experiences on their own end that began way, way, way back. Maybe even as far back as childhood. Some of it's not that far, but for a lot of people that are generally negative, terrible people throughout their adult life, it will probably stem back to childhood. Something happened to them in their childhood that screwed them over, and they never learned or were never told that they have issues. Maybe no one had the gumption to tell them. Maybe they didn't give off the right signals at the right time. It's different for everyone. Not everyone gets all the same chances and opportunities and information. I sure as heck didn't get all the same information as everyone else. It's one of the reasons that I call this the unshelter. It's because I was sheltered so much my whole life. And the only way to survive is to unshelter your mind from all the things you've been held back from that you need to know, no matter how scary or painful it might be to learn. Because believe me, this is not easy to learn and grasp onto here. You have to embrace the fact that the person who hurts you you'd be doing the same thing if you went through the same thing that they did. You'd be hurting someone else too if you went through the exact same stuff that your bully went through. And if you didn't have the opportunity to heal, then you'd be doing a lot of the same stuff they're doing to other people. It's a hard truth to swallow, but it's the truth. I've been an asshole to a lot of people. And yeah, it was because of my own ego. It was because of my own wanting to build myself up and be better than others, because I'd been kicked down for so much of my life. Between my religion telling me that I'm not good enough for God, that I'm not good enough for myself or for anyone. And a lot of the time I wasn't good enough for my dad because his standards were pretty ridiculously high. He was extremely strict, and yeah, he was not easy to get along with. But it's because of his experiences and what he went through. And so he's not the sole culprit. Ultimately, he is as much a victim as he made me. If not more. Probably more. If he was really beaten worse than I was, then he was definitely more of a victim than I was. I only wish that he had stayed alive long enough and in well enough condition for me to be able to talk to him more about those things. Because I've realized that, yeah, if he had been given the opportunity by the right person, he could have maybe improved himself some. Maybe he could have healed up a bit and made himself a little bit better of a person. But he's passed on and doesn't have that opportunity. We are here, and we do have that opportunity. So let's be aware of the real culprits, because when we put our focus, we take our focus off of the person who did the hurting, and we take it off of that. We realize they did that because someone else hurt them. Put the anger where, it's important to feel the anger. This is why it takes time, because anger is part of the healing process. But it's meant, just like a scab is eventually meant to go away, the irritation from your wound rubbing against other things and stuff, that's going to be there. It's natural, but it's not supposed to keep happening. It's supposed to go away. It's supposed to smooth out. There may be a scar there, but you will have to work to make it nothing more than a scar. And honestly, a scar is not that big a deal. Once you get to that point, but you have to work to get to that point, and that point takes time. You take the time, you realize where the actual problem is. Realize the real cause behind the effect. Because it's not the person, it's the chain of abuse. Hurting people. You can either be part of the chain and not heal yourself and hurt other people, or you can say, no, the buck stops here. I'm going to heal myself by not treating others as I have been treated in this chain of abuse. what about dealing with the bullies themselves? Well, we had the acronym AID, remember? Except that it'll take a while. Well, I mean, that's not answering this question, but except that it'll take a while. Realize what the actual cause is. The final step of healing yourself, when dealing with other bullies, don't take that shit. Seriously, that is the final step. Don't take that shit. There are multiple ways to not take that shit. You don't take that abuse. So how do you not take abuse? Well, dealing with those individuals, there's multiple ways to do it. And every situation is going to have a different best response. And you get to be the judge of that. The nice thing is, there are a ton of different ways, a ton of different options that you have. And any of them can be the right choice at the right time. You take a stand by setting boundaries, first off. Believe it or not, you actually don't have to stand up to every single bully that you meet and come across, especially the ones online. They're just going to make you angry and you're going to waste a bunch of time. You don't need to deal with that. You don't. But we're talking about the more serious ones. Sometimes the best, sometimes the best, even with the ones that you got to deal with face to face, sometimes the best answer is to just disappear from the environment entirely. In fact, that is what my sister did. She did not appreciate how she was being raised in our family. And when she was 18, she left without parental permission and consent. It was a big issue in our family because children being submissive to their parents is important. But she knew that because she was 18, she could legally leave. Their way of her leaving, the way they wanted her to leave, was really only by getting married. Pretty much. And it would only be to someone that they would approve of in their church. Well, within their guidelines of believing. And given how strict they were, you can imagine how enamored my sister was at that idea. Yeah, enamored enough to fucking leave. And yeah, we are the closest of all the siblings now. She's the middle child. She's the only girl, so she had it kind of rough growing up. Middle of 5 kids. Her experience was very different from ours. And yeah, I don't blame her one bit for having to leave. I likely would have done the same thing too if I were her. But like I said, my experience was very different. But she had to take that route, that boundary of leaving. Sometimes running away from a fight can be just as big and important as running to a fight. It's not going to be in the same situation, but different situation, just as important as the other time. If you see someone getting hurt that doesn't deserve it, or you're being attacked, then you need to stand up for yourself. You need to stand up for that other person that doesn't deserve to be hurt. That, and standing up for the truth someone is going to be screwed over in business or, any form of dishonesty, it's not good. Dishonesty always makes things worse for everyone. Yes, including the people that get away with it for a time because they end up being caught. Karma is a biatch to deal with. And do you really want to die the way the people who get away with it die? Because a lot of them still have pretty terrible deaths. There's nothing glamorous about how Hitler died. There's nothing glamorous about how Stalin died. A lot of these people that supposedly got what they wanted still ended up dying incredibly terrible death. Everyone hating them. That's not really how you want to go. You want to be remembered as, you want to have people remember you positively. You want, wouldn't you rather be remembered as a person who was healed and was known for all the good things they did in life, as opposed to known for being, always sad and always making life more miserable and dragging others down because of what happened to them? And, let's put ourselves in those people's shoes that went through all those terrible things. What the heck did Stalin go through? What did Hitler go through to be pushed into being such terrible people? How could that happen? Because it happened. It happened to real people. That means it could have happened to us if we had been put in the wrong situation at the wrong time and influenced by the wrong people. We could have been some pretty terrible people ourselves. We are fortunate to be where we are and to have the opportunity that we have, to be able to stand up for ourselves, to realize what the truth is, and to be able to talk about it, and to be able to embrace it, to be able to use it to heal ourselves. The more fair stands and boundaries we take with people who treat us badly in more different situations, the stronger and more confident we will become in ourselves. And the more people will respect you and want to befriend and work with you. And, you don't just have to be all out and rude and angry when you stand up to someone. You don't always have to physically fight. You can be calm. You don't even have to swear. You don't have to insult them. I know, it's hard not to, especially online. Especially when you just want to make some jokes, try and make people laugh in the process, but they get offended by it instead. Maybe it's best just to be calm and cool and collected the whole ride through and just try and be respectful. Believe it or not, this doesn't always work, but a lot of the time, when you stand up to people who have been hurting you, and you do it in a respectful, honest manner. You say, look, I realize that you were just trying to do the best you could with what you had, but what you did really hurt me, and, maybe we could talk about you never not doing that again, so that we can continue our relationship in a, mutual beneficial friendship. A lot of times, people will respond positively to you when you do that. I'm glad to say that I have been able to do this. And it is true, the more you do it, the easier it gets. Now, I will admit, it was very difficult for me with what I did. And I was fortunate in some of the ways that it turned out. But I first actually stood up to my dad while he was alive. And told him about how I felt. After this was all after I had left Christianity. In fact, it was closer to his deathbed, somewhat. And I was able to get everything off my chest to him, and I didn't try and make an enemy out of him, and he didn't try and make an enemy out of me. And I could never see myself being friends with my dad in this life, and we never were. Like I said, because he didn't really believe it, so I guess it couldn't happen. But it was in a better stance. It felt better getting it out there and saying those things to him and letting him know, and we were able to talk it out to an extent. He was in a very poor physical state of being by the time I got around to be able to saying all that to him, so we couldn't really have it all out as it would have been nice to. But it was still good to be able. I felt much better afterwards being able to do that. And then I did the same to my mom, actually. And then later on, if you followed my channel any recently, maybe I mentioned it, I can't remember. But I ended up standing up to my bosses at work, at my previous job. And I wanted to be angry with all four of them. My dad, my mom, both bosses. Both bosses were at the same job, by the way. Higher manager, lower manager. I stood up to the lower manager twice, actually, so it was like a total of 3 times at that one job. But I gotta say, I felt a lot better in myself after I was able to get those words out, and I was able to do it respectfully enough, honestly enough, and openly to where they all reacted better than I was expecting them to. And we were able to part on even enough terms to where I was at peace after it was all said and done. I don't know about them, but for me, I was able to let it go after I was able to say my piece. And I felt tremendously better afterwards. Now, I am still able to talk to my mom. My sister has a very different... She has her own struggles. I'm not going to speak for her, but because it's a completely different situation for her. she she literally breaks out in hives when when she has to think about talking to my mom, or you know, having to go visit. She gets physically ill around being from being around my parents, because of her own past and her own experiences. And she has done everything she can to let go and move on. She's been at this longer than I have, and she still has that is a literal physical issue she has to deal with whenever she's around my mom. And so she literally cannot be around my mom as much as I can. And that's going to be, it's going to be different for every single person in every single situation, as well as depend on individual healing, both in you and the person that you're dealing with. You may have to never see that person again. That might be the best thing. And that is okay. You don't even have to say anything. You don't have to say, hey, I'm letting go of everything you did to me. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to, it's what's going to be best for you. That is what this is about. This is not about giving them permission. This is not about accepting the bad that they did to you like it was okay. No. This is about letting go of what they did to you. For your sake. Not for theirs, for your sake. That is what you have to remember. You are letting go for your sake, not for them. They have to deal with it however they're going to deal with it. You have to deal with it however the absolute best is for you. You will know what it is, but you have to think on it. You have to take the time. You have to be the one to decide if they are worth it, if there was a genuine undertone of love there or not, if they're worth reconnecting with or not. Because honestly, with my parents, even though they hurt me, even though they homeschooled me my entire life and raised me in such a completely different and obtuse way compared to other kids growing up, it was they were doing the best they knew how. They had the wrong beliefs, they did the wrong things, but the intention, the underlying intention of what they meant, that was there. That was good. They meant well. Their priorities were a bit out of line, but they meant well. And I think that is one of the biggest issues. I'm not denying that there are genuinely bad people in religion that use religion for bad intentions. Those people are definitely out there. They need to be put into prison or executed. But those people are out there, okay? Not denying that. But it's important to know and to acknowledge that a lot of people that hurt each other within religion do so out of good intentions. As weird as it is to say. But I mean, think about it. When you go around preaching that you're going to go to hell if you don't believe in Jesus Christ for your sins. And if you don't, then you're you're not just going to hell, but you're a terrible blasphemous sinner who deserves to go to hell. Christianity can really be an unattractive religion when you take it for how it actually is instead of how they paint it. Of course, it's not going to apply to everyone. But some people do hurt each other out of religious convictions. They mean to do well. And they do it in the name, they genuinely mean to do well in the name of God, in the name of their religion, but it ends up being something bad that they're actually doing. They're brainwashed and convinced that it's right, but it's wrong. It happens. Happened to me. Probably happened to you. Even if it wasn't the big thing that caused you to leave religion, and I'm sure it's happened to you at least once. Everyone always, like, there's always guilt tripping, and people are trying to obligate each other to do things within religion for the sake of God, and just like that passive aggressive praying. Oh my gosh, wasn't that terrible to put up with. But that's humans for you. That is humans for you. And sometimes those humans are doing it out of ego. Sometimes there is a mixture of ego and desire of goodwill. Sometimes it's just goodwill. Sometimes there is no goodwill. But whether there is goodwill behind what they did to you or not, keep in mind the shoes that they walked in to end up in that position, to provoke them to hurt you. Whatever it was, that big background shit in their childhood, that's what caused them that abuse, that chain of abuse. So, accept that this healing may take a while, because there's always more to figure out and learn about. It always takes a while to heal from something that's really hurt you. Identify the real culprit, the real enemy. What was the actual issue? What was the actual abuse? Not just the person. What was the thing that caused the person to wear those shoes? What put the shoes on that person? Because it's not just the person. It's never just the person. It's always a person and a chain. Without that chain, that person would be very different. Without that abuse, that person wouldn't be the bully to you. They might have been just an acquaintance or even a friend. But then last and not least, don't take that shit. If that shit's coming down on you, you can leave. You can stand up to that person. You can separate yourself, take some time, come back, talk to that person, like, hey, I don't like what you did. Maybe we can talk about how we can resolve this issue. Like adults, resolve this. I'm trying to get my shit together. Maybe I can help you get your shit together. And we can get over this shit between each other and move on like adults. Maybe even as friends, maybe benefit from it. Or not, or, completely back off. Whatever. Maybe they're not worth it. Maybe they're too damaged. Maybe they're too hurt. Maybe it's just not worth your time. I can't speak for you. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know how much they hurt you. I don't know your situation. You got to figure out what the boundary is. You got to decide at what level to not take that shit. It's going to be different for every situation. But don't take that shit. So, what if I've done all three and I still get angry every time I see a church sign or just people out and about preaching? I'll be honest, that one still gets under my nerves a bit. I don't get mad at the individual preaching. I get more upset about the fact that they are preaching, but, you know, what do we do with these triggers that we still get from time to time? You know, sometimes you hear Christian music or, you know, whatever religion you're from, whatever, you see something that reminds you. Someone says something. Maybe someone says God bless you or something, and that triggers you, like, makes you think of those good old churchy times that you just hated. Or, you know, I don't know, but there's a million things that you can get triggered by when you have religious trauma syndrome. But triggers is what we are going to learn about in the next video. How to deal with those inanimate things that we hold a grudge against. The music, the gods, the God, Yahweh, I don't know. There's different ways of dealing with triggers, and so we will discuss that. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode, talking about how to heal from some of the hurt. I'm sure we'll probably, maybe we'll talk about some other aspects. If you have questions, feel free to ask. How I dealt with dealing with other stuff. Possibly, yeah. Ask questions, please. Oh, yes, of course. There are some videos. I didn't use the word in here for a reason, because it can also be a triggering word itself. The word forgiveness. But forgiveness is part of what I described in this video. I didn't want to use that word on purpose. I didn't want to use that word because there are different definitions of it, specifically according to Christians, and some of them say that reuniting with the person who hurt you is essential to forgiveness, and it is not. It is not. Different for every situation. And I brought that up because that word forgiveness is important in general. A lot of people use that word outside of religion and have different definitions for it, similar to what I have shared with you. And so, to show that I'm not the only one who thinks like this, and to provide you a better constructed variation of why it is important to forgive, to let go, to move on, how to do so, as well as what are the medical benefits for letting go of anger, of these issues. I am going to leave links to these videos in the description below. So check those out. They will all be shorter. They will each be shorter than this video. I guarantee it. There's also another great thing that I want to link and share with you that I think would really help you get a good grasp on this, and that is go and listen to the song Headlights by Eminem. I don't know if you're into rap or not, but Eminem had a particularly hard life as a child. He wasn't a rap artist, so he wasn't a Christian, obviously. But he had an abusive mother who raised him poorly. And, you know, he had his own traumas from dealing with that. And Headlights was a great song about him, about how he talks about, in a sense, basically forgiving his mother and realizing that it wasn't all her, that she messed up, yes, but she was trying to do the best she could for her time. So go listen to the song. I think you'll really enjoy it. It it moved me to tears. It makes me think about my parents whenever I listen to it. And of course, the other songs by him you can listen to about what he wrote. All the older songs, he wrote some pretty mean stuff, but just getting that aggression and anger out because he was going through his own healing and stuff. But when he got to that point to where he wrote that song, Headlights, just listen to it. It's a huge difference when you listen to the first songs he wrote about his mother and then you listen to Headlights. I think it'll help you. Just give it a chance. And if this video has helped you, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment. Would love to hear from you. Any suggestions for what you would like to hear about from my life regarding religious trauma, or any questions about I'm not an expert, but if I can lend you some advice or suggestions, feel free to ask away, and I will do the best I can to offer from my experience. And of course, if you are even if you don't have religious trauma yourself and you found it helpful, let me know. I would certainly appreciate it. And if you know anyone else, or if you know anyone that has religious trauma themselves, send them a link to my video. Of course, stay posted, and maybe you'll learn stuff how to help other people. If you ever meet someone who has left a religion and they're suffering from it, maybe watching these will help you learn how to understand to help them better, maybe. That's all I'm trying to do. Help people understand life a little bit better and heal on and heal themselves. Stay safe, my friends, and take care of yourselves. I'll see you next time. Stay safe. Farewell.